Welcome back everyone for Retro Scams. This time we're going to be going over the second most common games that I see on Facebook Marketplace as counterfeits, which are Game Boy Advance games. Now I do have a pile of Pokemon games, and we'll be covering each one of these on their own individual videos, just because how the special case for a lot of these Pokemon games. This is just going to be kind of a general covering of Game Boy Advance games, so we're going to stick to the regular cartridges. So what you see before you, there are 3 real games and 3 fake games. And just by a quick look at them, all of them actually look pretty good. I mean, using Final Fantasy VI for an example, they actually did a decent job. There's a lot more quality that seems to go into the Game Boy Advance games than what goes into the not Game Boy Advance games, which really is kind of sad. So with this example, I will say the top one is the fake one, the bottom one's a real one. So one of the most common things that you look at on all the other games, it's hard to tell on this one. There's the number that's stamped in there, but the issue is I can't really get it to show up that well because the price sticker was put on top of where that number is. So if you run a retro shop or anything, or if you sell games and put stickers on them, please try to avoid putting the price label on there. If you had to put a price label on, maybe like up in the top left corner or something would be the best place to put it, or even on the back. So Golden Sun, great series. You can see right there, there's 07 stamped on there. It's one of the things to look for to make sure that it's like the legit label and everything. Look for that number that's stamped on there. And I'm just barely getting the light on there. You can see the number stamped on there. It's like maybe a 22 or something. And then, yep, you guessed, Final Fantasy IV and Zelda Minish Cap are both fakes. And neither of them actually have that number on there. But for the most part, you're going to want to look, it's somewhere around the seal over on the right side is where the number is going to be stamped. And then the fake Final Fantasy VI has no number there either. Like if you want to depend on the stickers, a lot of times if you look at them, there's going to be like extra boldness to font on there. Some games even have misspellings on the labels on the front. But some things may be true about some and not others too. Like this one on the seal on the right side, this is a real one. It just says seal for the word on the bottom under Nintendo. This fake one says seal of quality. But the issue, you can't really go by that because the real Golden Sun, The Lost Age, says seal of quality also. And then the fake Minish Cap says seal. And then because of the sticker on the back of the Final Fantasy game, I'm not going to really share that one, but so the real game is on the bottom, the fake one's on the top. So these fakes, they actually do a decent job at matching these. I mean, even down to the terrible tri-wing screws. The next part to look at, if you have good lighting with you, so if you look inside the end of the cartridge, then you can actually see text where it says like Nintendo, it has a date in there. We'll look at this stuff a lot better when we have the cartridge apart because there is a decent amount of stuff you can tell just by looking in there. So then looking at the fake one, right away you can see, if I can get this positioned correctly, Nintendo is misspelled. Because I don't think Nintendo's supposed to have an H in there. But once again, we will look over those once we have these taken apart. So we are going to keep the fakes on this side and the reals on this side and plop these things apart using the terrible tri-wing screws. You know, while we're at it too, if you look at this nice Final Fantasy VI over here, the real one, if you have any garbage Game Boy Advance games or anywhere where you can just get one of these shells, like I have an extra of Motocross Madness, since the shells are the same on these, a retro restore tip right here. There we go, we swapped the shells, so now that back shell looks brand new. Then before you touch any circuit boards, make sure that you're grounded out. So all of these shells slide up and then lift off. I know you're supposed to slide them from the front, but where's the fun in that? Showing off the backs of these right now. Because one of the most important parts of all these... Oh, that one didn't want to pop out. So yeah, one of the most important parts to check on these is the back. So if you notice right away in the real ones, on the back of the chip, there are those same 4 rectangle type things that are on the Game Boy games. And then on the fake ones, they do not have those. They just have kind of generic looking circuit boards on the back. Nothing cool like what the official ones have. So then if we flip these over to the front, oh wow, that's funny. Final Fantasy IV, the fake one, has a battery in it. I'm actually going to flip these over so you can tell which game each of these are. So one thing to note on here, Final Fantasy IV, I actually looked up to see what the chip is supposed to look like. For that one, the chip is supposed to look like the real Final Fantasy VI chip. No battery on there. But then, also when I was looking it up, which you can find all this stuff on price charting, they're usually pretty good about having updated photos for all this. The case for, or the label for Final Fantasy IV is actually supposed to look more like the Final Fantasy VI one also. So that is 100% an incorrect label, which I don't have Final Fantasy IV to compare against, so I didn't know that until looking it up. So be sure that you know what the label is supposed to look like for what you are getting, which some games can have variants for those, so be careful when you're looking it up. Don't assume just because the label isn't right that it's fake, but from what I could find, no Final Fantasy IV for North America had that label. Here is the Final Fantasy VI fake chip. See how Nintendo's spelled on there? It's like NLHLEHDE. So I mean, the board does look kind of cool. It has all those extra numbers on it and everything, all those cool little gold pieces. Even has that blob right there. Which that blob, there are some older Nintendo games that have those on there, but it's usually not that common. That center part does look pretty cool though. So then when you look at the label, it should say AGB BZ6E somewhere on it. But, I mean, since it's the counterfeit, it's not going to say that anywhere. And then the back of the board, I mean, it just looks kind of boring. Nothing cool about it. Doesn't have those little rectangles on it. Once you get to the board on these, it's pretty obvious to tell that they're not real. One thing to note, this text above here, like that date with the misspelling of Nintendo, and then that little code right there, those are all things that you can see looking through the front of the shell of the cartridge. Then if we look at the real Final Fantasy VI, first thing you can see there is Nintendo spelled correctly. Then if you look at the front label, you have AGB BZ6E, and then right there on that biggest board, you have AGB BZ6E. Then as mentioned earlier on the back of the board with the legit ones, you have those 4 rectangles on the top. So this is something I didn't notice before, which, I mean, it'd be tough to see from outside of the case. You'd have to actually open it up, but on the real ones, you can see the lines going down from the back of it. On the fake ones, you cannot. Then we'll look at our next fake one, the Zelda Minish Cap. So this is another one where it has NLHTHDO, and then more of those blobs. And then on the back, it just looks kind of plain. Then you take the real Golden Sun. Once again, it spells Nintendo correctly on there. It has a little code next to it, starts with AGB. And then on the label, AGB AGFE. And if you look at the biggest chip on there, there's that code. And then when you go to the back of it, it has those rectangles, and then also you can see where it goes down to the little golden fingers on there. And then our final fake one, Final Fantasy IV. So this one doesn't even say Nintendo anywhere, and it's like they didn't even try. It has some weird MKE B1282, something like that. And of course a battery on there when the actual game does not have a battery. Which you can look that stuff up online too. I know when we get into the Pokemon ones, there are some that do have batteries and some don't. So Nintendo for your Game Boy Advance, for the most part, has moved on to using flash memory for saves. So like, especially with the Pokemon ones, things like that, the reason why you see batteries on them is because the Game Boy Advance did not actually have any way of keeping track of time. And then the back of this one looks completely different, looks kind of cool, but once again, this is the fake one, and we should hate it and run it over with a car. And then Popeye Rush for Spinach. This is actually a really fun game if you haven't played it. So this one, in that little area, you can see through the front of the shell when you're looking at the golden fingers. It will say Nintendo on there. It has the AGB and other little stuff after it. On the label, it says AGB APOE. And then on the chip, it matches that. Then once again on the back, you can see those 4 rectangles, and then you can also see where the backside of the gold fingers are on there. So as you can see, just kind of looking at the ones that are not like see-through cases or anything, it's a little more difficult with Game Boy Advance to tell. I mean, unless they do something like have a label that I at least couldn't find any records of a label like this existing. If anyone knows of a label like this existing, please leave a message in the comments about it. For the authenticity of the label, and probably the shell too, look for that little number that's stamped in there. And then as far as the label, compare it with something like price charting or just any other place online that you can, just to make sure that things are looking correct on there. Other than that, the main ways to tell all have to do with the board. So make sure Nintendo is on the board and spelled correctly. Make sure the back has those 4 rectangles. Let me know in the comments if that's a thing you've seen or if that's something that might just be certain ones, but seeing the backs of the gold fingers on here, where the fake ones did not have that. And then one of the other extremely important things is making sure that the product number from the label lines up with what's on the chip. And then just for fun, we have the Final Fantasy ones here. Final Fantasy 6. Just going to mix these up a bit, and I can kind of show you a way to tell how we know which one goes back for the real game. So right away from the front, I can spot which one the real and fake one is. The real ones have that weird little indentation on there. The fake ones have like that weird, I don't know, the weird thing right up there where it's kind of rounded. The backs are a little trickier, but this one's a real one. It has the little hooks on there where the game hooks into place. Plus it'll say ABS on there, when the fake one does not say that. And then another cool thing about it, if we take the real shell here and shine a light at it, it doesn't really come through. Like, you can't see it through the plastic or anything. That's because they use like higher quality plastic. They're not using garbage stuff like what fakes do. Because let me show you what the fake front label does. You can see everything through there. So move the flashlight along there and it's just garbage. And then the back shell, I mean, you can see a light through the screw hole, and then only through that one little weird spot, which was probably how they did the plastic injection. I could be wrong, could be some other reason why they have that, but it's the only spots where you can see the light come through. But then the fake garbage ones, I mean, that actually looks kind of cool. But that's not really a test that works when the game is in there, just because the game takes up all that spot and blocks where the light would be. And then the way the fake ones hook together up here, they'll have these holes in the case and then those little parts that hook in there. The real ones are set up a bit differently for how they hook together. So we'll get all these back together and then go to the fun part of seeing how they work in a system. Please let me know in the comments if I missed anything, but as far as we go with that, let's see how the real one behaves in here. So if you haven't seen one of these before, it's a Game Boy macro. But yeah, you turn the DS Lite into just a Game Boy Advance player at this point. It doesn't even have touchscreen or anything. Since it doesn't have a second screen, you can't really play DS games on there. We even have save games on here and everything, so it's just pretty awesome how everything works on here. There we go, we're Sabin in the airship. If anyone's watched any of the RPG videos, the RPG chat ones that I've done in the past, you will realize that Final Fantasy VI is one of my favorite RPGs. It is actually the best Final Fantasy RPG that exists. And I'm sure those Final Fantasy VII fan people are going to be chewing me out now. Oh, that's nice. It's not picking up the fake version. Let me give the fake one a quick clean clean all the scammy filth off of it. So that was pretty clean, but let's try this again, see if it picks it up. There we go, it picked it up. Hey, this one had save games in it also. Okay, so yeah. As far as the hardware is concerned, this is the legit game. So pretty much my recommendations on here, if you are buying a Game Boy Advance game on the internet, then make sure there's a good picture of the front label that you can compare against a real one. Even see if they'll adjust the lighting so they can get a shot of that little stamp on there. Also have them take a picture of inside of here, just because you'll see the Nintendo logo in there and everything. And if you can, get them to pop it open and at least take a picture of the front and back of the board. Because having the shell off of here is the most important way of seeing if it's real or not. Just because some fake games will actually spell Nintendo correctly in that little area. So once you have it popped open and you can look at it and make sure there are those 4 rectangles that things are spelled correctly on the board, and that this code matches what is on the big chip inside of there. And then if you're meeting up with someone from like Facebook Market or at a garage sale or something and you are purchasing a game, then, I mean, look at all those things in person, and if they allow you to pop it apart, then that would be best because then you can verify everything inside. If they don't allow you to pop it apart, I mean, that I don't want to say that will throw a red flag because there are a lot of people that don't know there are counterfeits out there. They may have actually gotten a counterfeit and not known about it or something. Or it could even be a real copy and they just don't want you to pop their real copy apart. So my recommendation in that case, at least look for the stamp, make sure Nintendo is spelled correctly on there, and I guess kind of cross your fingers. And then as far as the labels, make sure you know what the label is supposed to look like on the game that you're wanting to purchase. You can find pictures of legit and fake labels online at all sorts of different places, but the main one that I'd recommend, check out Price Charting, because they're usually pretty good about, especially some of the more expensive games, having the front and back and also having pictures of it popped open to see what the chips all look like. But also when doing that, one thing to be aware, they don't have all the pictures on there, so they may not have the exact label of the one that you're getting. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or anything, then please let me know in the comments. If there's anything I missed also, please let me know in the comments. If you want to see more things like this, make sure to subscribe, leave a thumbs up. And I want to thank you for watching. Have a nice day.